What's up, Twist fam? So I had one of probably the biggest realizations I've ever had in the last 4.5, 5 years since launching my business out of my college dorm room. And that is that after all this time and all this heartache that I've put into growing and scaling my business, that I realized that I haven't even been playing the same game as everyone else. Meaning that until very recently, I think because I've put in the time and I've put in the energy into learning my craft, which obviously is something that we all have to do to improve. Because I put all that time and energy into this, I now feel as if I'm on another, I don't want to say level, but I see things differently than I did before. I really, really, really feel like most of the issues in the past with my agency were simply because I had a lack of understanding of how business worked. And it wasn't until very recently that I fully feel like I'm playing a different game. And the reason I say all this is because I don't want you guys to have to go 4.5, 5 years trying to build your agencies up before realizing this. It was a huge time suck for me to go through all this trial and error to realize it. And so I wanted to kind of highlight what I think really it means to be playing a different game. And if any of you guys have been listening to Alex Hormozi podcast, The Game, there's a reason I use this word game, because it does feel like you're playing with almost like a cheat code in a way to get to better outcomes in your agency and in your life once you realize these fundamental principles around growing and scaling your agency. And so again, I don't want to come across as arrogant or anything like this. I just feel as if it's been 4 years, it's almost 5 years. And really that's, the same time you'd go through college or something. And there's some things you learn along the way that now that I know them, I really feel like if I was, let's say I'm a senior going up against a freshman in a basketball game or something on those lines, I think I have an advantage. The good thing about business is it doesn't matter, your physicality or even how smart you are in a lot of ways. If you just know the rules of how to play the game effectively, you can outwit and outsmart and outwork, outmaneuver anybody in the game as long as you know the right rules, right? And so here are some of the things that have really been game changers for me in terms of understanding the principles behind how agency scales and realizing that I was doing it entirely wrong before, and why so many people are swimming in the wrong direction and they're still so surprised as to why they're not getting the results that they should be getting, right? So here are the main things. First and foremost, when it comes to leads, right? I always went with the philosophy that when I was calling people or emailing them, 1 out of 100 people saying yes to my offer was actually a good thing. Why? Because that was the statistical average of most outbound campaigns. And a lot of businesses, a lot of agencies, when they try to grow or scale online, they end up having similar statistics. And they revert to what I call, and I've mentioned many times on this podcast before, the traditional trap, meaning they look at their numbers and they look at the statistics and they say, wow, I'm doing okay because I'm doing what everyone else is doing, and that's normal. So 1 in 100 is normal. Maybe sometimes 3 out of 100 is normal. And the reason we fall into this trap is because, like, for instance, I worked with massive companies, billion-dollar companies, and their numbers are very similar. So then you start to ask yourself, okay, well, how are these large organizations able to do this? And they're getting the same numbers as I am. Is that just mean that that is the numbers that are achievable everywhere? And should I ever strive for more? And what I realized is that when I work with those large businesses, the reason I was drawn into this fallacy was because large businesses are really just smaller businesses that are combined together. So you might be working with a department that is inefficient in a large business, but the whole business as a whole figured out the principles that make a strong and compelling business and organization early on. And whenever they add new divisions or add new features to their business model, there are always going to be learning processes, and not everyone in the entire organization will know everything about how to grow and scale a business. But the people at the top, the people who built the business from the beginning, they understand these principles. And so it's not enough to just look at large companies and say, hey, I'm doing the same as them, I must be fine. No, what you have to do is you have to realize that when it comes to lead acquisition, the reason you're not playing the same game as people who are more experienced is because you're opting for statistical norms. You're not looking for things that are unique or differentiated in terms of the outcomes, right? So for instance, with myself, I look at it as if I call someone on the phone and every single person isn't saying yes to my offer, then the lead magnet sucks, right? Obviously, there's some things you can account for. Like, for instance, if somebody's busy a certain week, they can't take you up on the offer, or for some reason, the person you called is not actually a business owner, or some other tiny things like that. But for the most part, every single person should say yes. When I had this realization, it's been a completely game changer for me, because I've realized that I can put 100 meetings on any single person's calendar with absolutely no cost other than a phone and a good list, which does have some cost, but it's very low compared to advertising. So virtually free. I could put 100 meetings instantly into any business right off the jump. And the reason and the way you do it is by thinking through the lead magnet. The lead magnet needs to be very, very good. What are some examples of lead magnets? Well, one that's been really popular for me right now is inviting people on my podcast. That one works really, really well because the highest human need that every single person has, if you look at the Maslow, I forgot, hierarchy of needs, the top need, one of the top, is just to feel recognition and be part of a community, right? To have like a higher sense of self-worth in a business community or a community in general, right? When you get broadcasted on someone else's show and they're interviewing you, there's probably no other form of flattery greater than that. So when you interview someone and they say yes and they hop on a call or a meeting, they are getting interviewed, but they like you so much after that they're interested in hearing anything that you have to say. Plus, you could just put a question at the end of the calendar that says, hey, are you interested in spending 5 minutes at the end of the call, hearing how I can do X, Y, or Z? What happens is about 70% of the people say yes. Sure, some people say no, but even if they say no, you don't have to sell them, but you can just ask them for data collection. Like you can say, hey, I noticed you said no to this. Are you sure this is something you're not interested in? And you don't have to push it. Just ask them that. You can get good data because then you can figure out why they said no and see if there's a way you can improve your form, your calendar form. But the point is that instead of getting 99 out of 100 people to say no to you, you're now getting 80 out of 100 to say yes to an interview. Plus, if you run out of space on your podcast, it's a great, great thing because that means you have a wait list, which is really, really good for prospecting. You want a wait list. You want people to be banging on your door, hoping and waiting to come to be interviewed by you, right? That is a good thing. That means that you have a lot of demand in your business. That's a good thing, right? So you get, instead of 99 no's, you get 80 yeses. And if you get 80 yeses and 70% of them say yes, that's somewhere around 50 to 60 yeses to a meeting. So now you just went from 0 meetings or 1 out of 100 to 50 every 100, which is a dramatic, dramatic difference. And so this is kind of what I'm talking about. When you learn things like this that fundamentally change the way that you think about the game, you are going to be making a huge difference in your life and your business. The other one that I'm going to touch on, I'm actually going to be doing a series of these podcasts. So the next episode after this is going to be a podcast, or maybe the one after, depending on how it falls in the schedule, but is going to be on how do you pick the right kind of product, what a good product is, and why the best companies in the world are able to defensively scale their profit margins with a solid product from wherever they're at when they start their business to millions of dollars in revenue while still maintaining extreme profitability with their agency. And I'll go into why that is as well. So this is kind of part one of sort of like the principles that I've noticed and I've learned that for me, in terms of the game that I'm playing now, I do feel like I've elevated in a sense. And I don't think this is something that is unique to me. This was a lot of trial and error. And if you just take the things I'm saying right now, you could get to this point too. You don't have to be running around in the dark like I did for 4 years trying to figure out these things. Instead, you can get started right away on really seeing how businesses should be run and operated as an agency. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Again, feel free to share this episode with other people you think might find it valuable. Hit me up. My email is lucas@twiz.io. If you ever want to chat about anything or have content ideas, I'm always open to hearing your content ideas so I can make something for you that can help you grow and scale your agency. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it and hope you guys have a great week.